What's up, guys? This is Ben with 2020 election predictions, and tonight I just want to do a live stream to go over some of the recent polls that have come out. I mean, we're only about 55 days away from the 2020 presidential election, the Senate elections, and the House election. So I want to go over all the most recent polls that I think will affect the different races. I think right now that some of the polls out of Florida are looking very interesting. I think we want to look at some of the polls from Wisconsin, some of the polls from Pennsylvania. And also, I mean, I think it's really important to distinguish between the Senate polls and the presidential election polls. Because I think one of the stories that is going to be forgotten is kind of where the Senate ends up. I think right now it's probably about a 50-50 split. But if we see the Democrats making ground in Iowa or Montana, or maybe even Georgia, or if we see the Republicans gaining ground in North Carolina or Maine, we just saw that Joe Lieberman, who was the 2000 Democratic presidential candidate or vice presidential candidate, has endorsed Susan Collins, who's a Republican, in her Senate race, and that will definitely be a very competitive Senate race. I think right now, looking at the polls, we see that it's not looking very close. I think the Democratic challenger is up by an average of like 5 to 6 points, but I think that will be a race that will kind of just tell the story of the how the country is turning out. Is the Republican Party dominated by Trump? And if Maine voters think so, then I think they'll probably the more moderate, maybe more Democratic voters are going to vote against Susan Collins. But if like kind of the George W. Bush, kind of the more like John Kasich moderate Republicans can vote for Susan Collins and have her outperform Donald Trump, that might kind of tell a story of where the Republican Party is going in the future. A lot of people think that Susan Collins's vote yes for Brett Kavanaugh kind of like ruined her political future. However, I think if she were to vote no, she would have been primaried in the Senate, and there would have been kind of been a more conservative, more Republican candidate for Senate. And I think that probably that more conservative candidate would have ended up losing to the Democrats. So I'm thinking just from a political perspective, probably was smart of her to vote yes on that Republican candidate. So it looks like that we have 18 people right now, which is pretty good for about 3 minutes in. So I'm gonna just move over to the chat so I can answer your questions, because that's the purpose of doing these live videos. And I would just love for some ideas of what I can talk to for the next 25 minutes or so. So did you see the Trump Michigan rally? If so, thoughts? I have not seen the any of the real rallies yet. I'll probably start watching them a month before the election. But if there's anything that he said that you want to like comment on, I'll be happy to offer some commentary on it. Biden is expanding his lead everywhere except Florida. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I would say Biden's been pretty steady across the board. His poll numbers have been declining probably from about a month or so ago, and that's when we saw the betting odds kind of converge to about even. But I think recently we've seen Biden kind of leading it in the betting odds. I think we have seen some polls in Florida that have it very close. However, I would still say that Biden has a slight advantage in Florida right now, but I think it could be trending in Trump's direction for sure. What are your thoughts on the interview just released that Trump said he like downplaying it? Do you think this will affect him much, just in and out of people's minds? I think that, like, there's been a lot of books that have come out, and I don't think there's been any specific like polling kind of that we've seen a dip in like Trump support. I just think that kind of like Trump's base really doesn't really care about these things. They're either with him or without him. I think for the very like few swing voters, this might kind of sway the or tilt the election. I think kind of the main group of voters that like kind of these books and these quotes might really affect it would be kind of in terms of like the maybe more conservative, moderate, like kind of like never Trump voters who really don't like Trump, but they're like still call themselves conservatives. So I think if kind of more of these type stories kind of like build up, Trump might lose those voters, but I think part of me kind of thinks he's already lost them. So I really think kind of just more of the stuff piling up is not going to have a huge effect. I think for any other past nominee, like any one of these books would have been like a huge scandal. But I think Trump is they call him Teflon Trump for a reason. I think he's kind of immune to some of these scandals. So I will read some of y'all chats in a minute. Thank y'all so much for joining. I really just kind of want to answer your questions that you do in the chat. And if you would like me to kind of talk for a subject for a while, you can click on the $ right here and do a super chat where you can kind of type in anything you want and it shows up highlighted, and I'll kind of like focus on that. I love seeing that. And it's really exciting. So I'd really encourage you to kind of hit the $ under chat and like do a super chat. I mean, even if it's only for like $2 or $3, it's just really exciting for me to see. So let me read some of this chats while I wait for those to come in. Wisconsin is one of the hardest states to poll. Most have Biden up, but the polls are underpolling rural voters by 10 to 15 points. I think this was definitely the case in 2016. We saw the polls in Wisconsin, just the state of Wisconsin's were off by about 7 to 8 points. I think it's a lot of times harder to poll these rural voters. One thing that we saw in 2016 across the board is that more highly educated voters were oversampled in these polls. So like people who have their PhDs, who might have gone to graduate school or college. And who we saw was undersampled were the voters who maybe hadn't gone to college. Maybe they're more in rural areas where it's kind of like hard to get access to like a landline, let's say, or like maybe these people don't have cell phones. So I think that's definitely going to be a consideration, because I think the reason why the polling people didn't poll these people is because typically they don't vote. So I'll be very interested to see. I do think that some of these pollsters have taken steps to try to diminish the mistakes that they made in 2016. But I think it's going to be really hard to do perfect polling. So I think that a lot of people are looking at different indicators and trying to kind of look at those more. And that's why I think there's such a difference between the betting odds right now that have a pretty like an even race, than kind of more of the models and the polls that have Biden up by a significant advantage. What do you think about Trump's growing Hispanic support? So I think this is a pretty interesting story. I think in Florida, we're definitely seeing Trump support go up among Cuban Americans mainly. But I think if you look at a state like Arizona or even New Mexico, these are states that are both, I think, are going to trend leftward and vote to the left of what they did in 2016. So I think Biden's going to outperform Hillary Clinton. And we've even seen Trump pull out a lot of his funding out of Arizona. And I think this is partly due because there's a growing Hispanic population. And I think just Biden has an advantage over the over Hispanics. And I definitely think that overall Trump might be improving, but with a expanding Hispanic electorate that's favoring Biden, I think that would definitely just help him overall. Thank you, Parth Naik. If y'all don't know what a super chat is, go look at the chat right now. Parth Naik started off very well. Thank you so much, Parth Naik. So I'm going to read his super chat and kind of focus on that for a long time. So if any of you are interested in the subject that I wanted to spend a lot of time, do that. So Roosevelt states have Trump signs everywhere. Does that signify a Trump win, or just is it based, or is it just based on energized and is at the outcome not affected by this? So I think there's a lot of anecdotal cases in 2016. This was mainly after the election. You saw in a lot of parts of rural, like Pennsylvania, rural Wisconsin, even rural Michigan, there was a lot of Trump signs. And I think this does affect people who kind of live there. So but maybe voters who hadn't voted before, they're seeing all these Trump signs, so that might kind of encourage them to vote. I think you'll probably see the opposite affecting more urban areas like Detroit or Pittsburgh. Maybe you might see more like Biden signs. But I don't think kind of we should base our political analysis purely on the Trump signs. But I think it does help that if you look at the polls, Trump voters seem to be more enthusiastic and energized than Biden voters. But I definitely think that there's a lot of anti-Trump energy too. So I think that will play a lot into it. Sebastian, thank you so much for the super chat. You didn't say anything, but thank you so much regardless. Sebastian has been one of my fans from day one, and I'm definitely going to reach out to him. So that's something. If you kind of become one of my super fans, I'm going to kind of start a service where I'm going to kind of like do special things for them. So Parth and Sebastian have been with me since day one. Love to see the super chats coming in, guys. Keep them coming. But don't let Parth and Sebastian pull all the weight. So let's see. Let's kind of look at some of the other chats. We wait for some more super chats to come in. Trump's momentum seemed to have tapered off, possibly in light of these news stories. I think this could be very possible. And I think a lot of like kind of Trump people who like Trump kind of think that these were timed. And that, I mean, people like, I mean, I really don't think we are going to know if these stories are true or not. I think that the main story about the soldiers is definitely more contested than the Bob Woodward story, where we actually do have some audio of that. I did see a pullout that had Biden actually winning the military vote, which is typically a group of voters that support Republicans, and like they voted for Trump over Hillary Clinton in pretty large margins. So it does appear that Trump's momentum has tapered off some. We saw that Biden had a really good fundraising haul in the month of August. And I mean, Trump's was still pretty good, but it was about $100 million less. So, I mean, everything is relative in politics because it's two different people. So it's whoever gets the most votes wins. We did see that Hillary Clinton outspent Trump 2-1 in 2016. And I kind of question the narrative that the 2020 election is going to be decided off money, because I feel like people already have their political opinions, and that's not really going to change just based on like an ad or even like I don't know, like a knock on your door, and like that's like kind of what people pay to kind of get out the vote. But I think what one of the main functions of like money will just kind of have a get out the vote type deal. So, and that's always very important. So I think the presidential debates will be very interesting. I'm definitely going to try to live stream those. And definitely offer some post and pre commentary on them, because I think that they'll be the most viewed debates in presidential history. I don't know how much they're going to move the needle a lot, but I think if Biden really does not do well and kind of just like looks tired and maybe has a bunch of gaffes, I think this could cause like voter turnout to drop and just have a lot of Democrats not vote for him. I don't think that a lot of people are going to shift to Trump, but it could just like drive down voter turnout among Democrats. And I really think that is the best thing that the Trump campaign can hope for. I think if the debates are even, I think it probably helps Biden, because I think people kind of assume that Trump's going to do well, so it's kind of already baked into it. So even if Trump does slightly better than Biden in the debates, I don't really think it's going to move the needle that much. I think that there would definitely probably be more insulting. And one thing that I think could backfire for Trump, if he's kind of like too aggressive, too like name calling, I think this could backfire for Trump, because people would kind of feel bad for Biden. So I would say like that's probably the worst thing that Trump could do in the debates. And with Harris and Pence, Pence was actually a pretty good debater in the 2016 election. That was kind of the only thing that the only debate where the mainstream media actually kind of thought that Pence won against Tim Kaine. And Harris honestly didn't do super well in the debates, but no one's going to vote based on the vice presidential debates. I mean, they're fun to talk about it, but I don't think it'll matter that much. It's true that Biden did hold his own in the Democratic primaries. I mean, he did have some gaffes here and there, and I think it'll maybe be harder against a one-on-one opponent because they're gonna ask questions directly to each other. Christopher, thank you so much for your super chat. If y'all were all wondering what a super chat is, Christopher just sent one. So I would just really encourage y'all just like kind of try it out, even if it's $1 or $2. I think it's just like really cool to do. So please do this. All right. Christopher asks, do you feel like the Woodward tapes will move the needle? Some analysts are calling it a death blow, while I feel like his base is unlikely to care. I kind of agree with what your analysis is. I think we've seen like thing after thing in the headlines on CNN are like, Trump is done. This is the final blow to Trump. I saw an article on CNN that said these three authors are going to decide the 2016 or the 2020 election. I really don't buy into this narrative a lot, just because I mean we've seen time and time again. I mean, I guess it started out with I mean, it probably started out before this, but we saw like Trump's niece. She came out with a book. We saw John Bolton's book. We saw the Woodward tapes. We heard this Atlantic story. I think it's going to be harder to deny some of the claims in the tapes because Trump is on tape saying them. But really, when I kind of heard one of the snippets of the tape, I really didn't think it was as damning as kind of what some of the headlines kind of seemed like it was. I mean, I think in the audio in February, Trump was kind of saying that the coronavirus is serious, which, I mean, it definitely was serious. People are saying that like that's in contrast to like when Trump was kind of doing his press conferences and he was lying. I think that people have kind of already seen those press conferences. They were done in March, so I think they've already had as much effect as they're going to have. I don't think that the Woodward tapes are going to have as big of an effect, but that coupled with what the Atlantic story said that Trump said about soldiers and wounded veterans might have very well kind of stopped Trump's kind of surging, because now the betting odds I think are about like +10 or +7 for Biden, and they were about like dead even before. All right, so let me kind of look at some of the chats while I'm waiting on for the next super chat. But Christopher, thank you so much. I think that's a very good question because we've seen that a lot in kind of news stories. But it's always questionable on whether things will have a big effect. People in hindsight say that the Comey letter about Hillary Clinton, her emails had a big effect. I don't really think that people could have known that before the results of the election. I definitely think that the Access Hollywood tape probably had the biggest negative effect on Trump. But other than that, I mean, it really is. I mean, Trump isn't called Teflon Trump for no reason. So that's interesting. All right, let's see. Let's see. Question to that. Do you believe the Atlantic article? I mean, I really don't know. Can someone tell me if the debates will be broadcasted live on YouTube? I assume that they will be. I think that's one thing that networks are trying to make an effort out of, is trying to get like a lot of voting information. And I think that the three debates, they're going to try to get access to them. His base isn't as big as it was in 2016. It needs to be bigger due to higher turnout and a more likable candidate. I think that this is true. I don't think Trump is toast. I think he's actually gained a few voters from 2016. I don't know if you would necessarily call them that his base, but I mean, just anecdotally, he's also lost some voters. I mean, I followed the Republican voters against Trump um, Twitter account, and you kind of see that like different people are like, I voted for Trump in 2016, but now I'm going to vote for Biden in 2020. So I think we see a lot of publicity with this. I haven't seen a lot of like Hillary Clinton voters change to, or like say that they're going to change to Donald Trump, but I have seen some like people here say they are going to vote for Trump in 2020 when they didn't in 2016. So I think one of the most prominent examples of this is Ben Shapiro, who has a very, very large following. I think he has like 2 million subscribers on YouTube. So I'm not there yet, but I think I'm going to get there at some point. So hopefully we'll see that. So do you think Wallace moderating first debate will help or hurt Trump? So I think that I mean Chris Wallace, I think is definitely more of a conservative, but he's definitely like a anti-Trump conservative. But I think he's probably better than any of the other news networks that could be doing it because I think they're probably going to be more biased. I think people said I thought in 2016 that all the debate moderators were fairly good. I think in 2012 we saw like Candy for CNN. People thought kind of she was biased against Romney, but I thought in 2016 they're pretty well done. And people say that Chris Wallace, he did the third and final debate, said that he did the best out of the 3 debates. And I mean, obviously Trump is going to whine about it, but like they aren't going to choose like someone from Breitbart or like someone who's just like they like aren't going to pick like Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity. I mean, they just aren't going to do that, and they also probably aren't going to choose. I mean, I guess they could choose like Don Lemon, but I really don't think that like people would really say that's like fair. So I think like Chris Wallace is someone where like both sides can kind of say, look, I mean, this is kind of fair. And I do agree that Chris Wallace probably calls it down the middle. I think now since Trump is president, he's probably going to be more critical of Trump right now than kind of Biden because like Trump is the president, he is making the big decisions. But I think if Biden were president, that Wallace would be as critical of Biden if he made a mistake too. Alex Jones should moderate the debate. That's a funny joke. I think that would be a very interesting debate, but yeah, that's definitely not going to happen. All right, guys. So I'm about 23 minutes in, so I'm gonna wait for some more super chats. But if I don't get any more, I'm probably gonna wrap this up. So if you want to keep on this live stream and then do that, and don't let Christopher, Sebastian, and Parth pull all the weight because they've definitely done this in the past. So it's get some more super chatters. Just click the little $ under the chat symbol. You can do that. Let's see. Chris Wallace is a registered Democrat. I honestly have no idea if he is. Do you think there'll be some good one-liners? I definitely think that there will be. I think that Biden's going to prepare very hard for these debates. I saw a news article that Trump really isn't going to have any formal debate prep like he did in and he didn't have any debate prep in 2016. And there's this article that said he's not going to have it in 2020. So who knows? All right. Any more kind of like questions in the chat? I'd love to answer some. And if you want me to talk about it for a while, hit the $ and do like a super chat even for $1 or $2. I kind of just want to see if it still works because I feel like for long sections it doesn't really work, but we will see. We will see. I'm gonna get a LaCroix real quick. In fact, if that's all right with you, kind of wait for some more chats to come in so I can talk about some more stuff. Will the debate move any voters? I think the only way that the debate could affect voters is if Biden just really has a bad performance. Other than that, I mean, I think if Trump has a really bad performance, it's not going to move very many voters. But we will see. All right, guys, I'm at 25 minutes. I'm probably going to hop off pretty soon. So if you'll have any kind of like last lingering questions, I'm just going to wait for the next super chats that come in to answer those. But two days so far, I've kind of just like talked about a bunch of the polls that have come out recently. We had a lot come out on Wednesday. I'm looking at them on Real Clear Politics. Some out of Pennsylvania, some out of Arizona, some out of Michigan, some out of Florida, some close ones out of Florida. So I think all these things are very, very interesting. I think Arizona right now is probably going to lean towards Biden. At first, I really thought it was a pure toss-up, but just based on looking at these polls and even the 2018 results, and then also just having the Senate race there, that I think the Senate race is going to help Biden a lot. I think Mark Kelly is like definitely a very attractive candidate against Martha McSally. Martha McSally lost in 2018, so I don't really know why the Arizona governor appointed her, appointed the loser to take John McCain's spot. And I think that Arizona overall, I mean, its past two senators were John McCain and Jeff Flake. Not the hugest Trump fans at all. So I definitely think that there's kind of a lot of kind of even among Republicans. I think that Trump definitely is not as popular in Arizona as like John McCain was back in 2008, and we can see that just with the margins too. Why don't people feel like the Senate and Gov races in North Carolina won't help Biden? I definitely think they could, but we saw in 2016 that the governor's race, the Democrat won, but Trump still won by 3.5 points. That is a pretty like big gap when we're talking about split ticket voting, because it really doesn't happen very much. I think that I think that the Trump and governor's race will be like as big as like 5 to 10 points apart, because I think we'll see some more moderate Republicans vote for Roy Cooper, but I think that you'll see some Roy Cooper voters vote for Trump and vice versa too. Yeah. Biden will not win in a landslide. I don't think Biden will win in a landslide. I don't think he's a Barack Obama figure like in 2008 when he beat John McCain. And I think people are just a lot more polarized than they were in 2008 or even like 1984, when Ronald Reagan like won a true landslide. I think that's kind of the last like true electoral landslide that we will see in a while. And I also don't think Trump's going to win in a landslide either. I think it's going to be a very close race. I think it's going to take a week to kind of figure out the final results. All right, guys, I'm probably going to head off. I'll probably stay on until about for a minute and a half, until 30 minutes. Thank y'all so much for joining. I really appreciate Parth, Sebastian, and Christopher for doing those super chats. Really appreciate those. And if y'all have any final questions, then I'd really appreciate super chat here. Thank you all, everyone who's in my chat. No Martinez, Jonathan Miller, Election Center, Center 20, APLO. It's always great for you to tune in, and I'll be back whenever I tune in. Thanks, guys.